This is a short update rather than a full episode, as reality sometimes doesn't wait. Three events this week, one in the Middle East and two in the United States, reveal how fragile trust has become. Trust between states and trust that ordinary life can remain safe from sudden violence. Welcome to Global Risk Profile, where we break down the headlines that matter and the ones that should. The first event is the Israeli strike in Qatar. On September 9th, Israel carried out an airstrike in Doha, Qatar, targeting Hamas's political leadership. 6 people were killed, including a Qatari security officer, but reports conflict on whether top Hamas officials like Khalil al-Haya and Khaled Mashal survived. At the time, they were reportedly reviewing the latest US ceasefire proposal. Theories about what really happened diverge. One theory is that Israel acted alone. The US military reportedly saw Israeli jets heading to the Gulf and only learned the target after the attack began. President Trump then called Qatar's emir to reassure him it wouldn't happen again. If Israel truly acted unilaterally, this may point to internal Israeli political pressures. A bold strike like that might have made sense in late 2023 or in 2024, but it feels late and destabilizing now at this point in the negotiation and the war. There's another theory that it was all coordinated. This reading says that Hamas has become a liability for Qatar, and the US may have quietly accepted the strike while avoiding the appearance of giving a green light. That would suggest that Washington, Doha, and Jerusalem all see Hamas as a dead end for diplomacy, maybe even fragmenting internally. Either way, the fallout is stark. Qatar condemned the attack and suspended its mediation role, leaving only Egypt and the US to try to negotiate, though neither has the same leverage as Qatar did. For Doha, the risks of hosting Hamas now outweigh the benefits. Qatar may respond by reducing ties with Hamas and moving closer to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and maybe even leaning more on Turkey. For Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that the days are over when terror leaders will enjoy immunity in a particular place. That message obviously extends beyond Doha. It signals a willingness to pursue Hamas leaders even in capitals allied with Washington, raising the risk of diplomatic isolation, but also showing Israel's high tolerance for escalation. But again, the question arises, if this act is justified, why only now? The second story is two stories about violence in the United States. 2 murders this week jolted America. In Charlotte, a 23-year-old Iryna Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee who fled Kyiv after Russia's invasion, was stabbed to death on a light rail train. The suspect has a long criminal record: armed robbery, assault, breaking and entering, yet he was at large and not behind bars. For many, her death symbolizes not just tragedy, but systemic, escaping war only to fall to valiant crime in the country she sought as refuge. In Utah, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated while speaking at a university event. Authorities are treating it as political violence. Coming after 2 assassination attempts on President Trump, Kirk's killing underscores the growing sense that America's political disputes are no longer contained by words. It's worth noting that Kirk himself advocating keeping political disputes to words and not resorting to violence. This was his mantra. At first glance, these cases seem unrelated, but together they speak to a deeper fracture. When public spaces, a commuter train or a public stage, can no longer be trusted as safe, society itself feels unstable. Regarding the appropriate response to such an event, Charlie Kirk's friend, James Lindsay, a figure himself in conservative circles, framed it this way: we have a choice, catharsis or civilization. Catharsis is the release of rage, vengeance, despair, tempting in the moment but destructive in the long run. Civilization means swallowing anger and channeling it into something constructive, even when it feels bitter. The deaths of Zarutska and Kirk seem to demand a stronger response from the Trump administration, from conservative groups, and maybe from others. And maybe such a response is coming. But here lies the danger. Those who weaken law enforcement or inflame political conflict often count on provoking overreaction. If outrage curdles into vengeance, it confirms the narrative of chaos and portends a downward spiral. That doesn't mean nothing should change. Zarutska's murder exposes urgent failures in criminal justice and public safety. Kirk's assassination may be the catalyst for overdue changes and reforms. But if those changes are to build rather than destroy, cooler heads must prevail. That's it for this episode of Global Risk Profile. If you found this useful, thoughtful, or just different, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Remember, the headlines may change, but the deeper patterns rarely do. Thanks for listening, and stay sharp.